Hi, Tony. Can you hear me, Tony?
Sure can.
Okay, good. All right. Took
Where
me
you-
a minute to get in.
Where are you at, Jeffrey?
North Severe High School in Salina, Utah.
All right. How's the weather in Salina, Utah?
You know, blue sky, sunny. You know, we drove all the way here. Hit a little bit of snow coming down Provo Canyon, but it's been great roads. No problem.
Good.
Okay, Mayor, we can start if you're ready.
Okay, all right. I call this Morgan City Council meeting order. It is January 26th. I'd like to welcome those who are here online in the meeting, as well as those that may be listening with the YouTube. Appreciate your interest in the city and what we're doing. We'd like to start with if Ty would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. After that, we'll ask Jeffrey to open with a word of prayer for us. So Ty. Ty, you're muted.
Hi. Oh, I like that picture too.
Oh, did the flag go away?
Yeah.
How about I start this little shindig over? There we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this evening and the opportunity that we have to meet in a Morgan City Council meeting and to be able to discuss the needs and the affairs of Morgan City. We're grateful for the valley that Thou blesses us to live in and help us to do our part to continue to make it a great place to live, that we'll be able to make the decisions that will benefit the citizens that are living in Morgan City now and off into the future, that we'll be able to think with a sound mind and make decisions that'll be prudent and that will help everyone within our city. We ask a blessing to be upon those that are suffering this time through the pandemic, through illness or mental illness, or even lack of work or any other problems that may be arising because of this pandemic that's going on. Bless them and comfort them and help us to be able to help meet those needs of people that are less fortunate. Again, we're grateful for all that Thou blesses us with, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'd like to thank Ty and Jeffrey for starting us off that way. Okay, next item, consent agenda. We have City Council meeting minutes January 12th and the warrants. If the council has any questions on that, I entertain any questions, or somebody got a motion ready, I'll take a motion.
Hey, Mayor,
Yes, Tony.
so what was the expense on the bucket truck?
So our bucket truck had some issues with the bucket itself operating, and so they had to get that repaired. We do have a new bucket truck on order, but they're about 1.5 years lead time to get them built and delivered to us. So we knew it had some issues. We were hoping to get a new bucket truck beforehand, but just wasn't safe, so they had to get it fixed. And I don't know exactly what they did to it, but there were 2 different expenses for that one.
So ties up bucket truck on that rotating or revolving replacement program.
No, it's not. It's owned by the power department itself, and so they just fund that out of their own equipment capital line item. The other equipment that's shared in between the different departments are in the internal service fund, and so those ones are on a replacement. So the department specific ones we've left in the department just because they own them outright. So, or themselves, they don't really share the bucket truck.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the minutes or the warrants?
Mayor, I've reviewed the minutes and the warrants and would move to approve the City Council electronic meeting minutes of January 12th, 2021, and the warrants dated 1/12/21 to 1/22/21.
I could second that.
A motion by David and second by Tony. We approve the City Council electronic meeting minutes from January 12th, 2021, and the warrants of the date specified. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing no, free to vote. All those on the City Council, if you raise your hand, will count by raise of hands. Okay, there are 5 ayes. Anybody opposed? Somebody opposed? Okay. Motion passed unanimously with 5 ayes. Okay, next item. Denise, do we have anybody for citizen comment? Okay, we'll move to the next item. And the next item on your agenda is a training, annual training. I'll turn the time over to Denise to discuss that briefly and let her take it from there.
Okay, each year we're required to have annual training on conflict of interest, sexual harassment, and Open and Public Meetings Act. Gary Crane has graciously accepted the invitation to do the training again this year. For those of you who aren't aware who Gary is, he's the city attorney for Morgan City and also for Layton City. Prior to the meeting, I emailed each one of you a copy of the presentation that has notes, spaces on the side for notes. And if anybody didn't get it, send me a note in the chat and I'll run and email it to you again. Also, after the meeting later on this week, I'll have a conflict of interest form that I can either email you for you to fill out and scan and send back to me, or you can come into the city office and fill it out so I can have it for my file. If anybody has any questions, you can ask Gary. So I think Ty's going to show the presentation for you, Gary. Is that okay? Oh, you'll have to unmute. Gary, you're muted. There we go.
Hey, Gary, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
You're muted, Gary. Can you unmute?
There we go, finally.
Okay.
I think those are the most famous lines spoken these days is
Yeah.
unmute yourself. They have to be. So I hope everybody can remain awake. If you can't, just go ahead and sit back, get a drink, and pop some popcorn, and here we go. This will be one of the most interesting meetings I've run because I haven't ever run a Zoom meeting with a presentation before. So Ty, I'm going to depend on you, my technologist, to get this thing done. So
I've never had to listen so close because now I have to advance the slides. So this will be the closest I've ever paid attention to this presentation.
oh my heavens, that's not so good. I am going to try and show a video too, so I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll give it our best. Hang on just a second here. Okay. So I will probably reduce this, but let's start right up front. So there are three things that I have to teach you tonight and that you have to listen to. And there's absolutely no better way to teach somebody than to be compelled to listen to your speaker. And that's kind of what the law says that I have to do, is I have to teach you and you have to listen to me. So that's not a bad thing. What I want to do is I want to approach it just a little bit differently. If you could, Ty, would you advance the slide? I'm going to talk about the subject of implicit bias first, and Dave and some of the others that were able to attend a conference, a land use conference. How many of you were able to attend that land use conference by looking at the ULUI site? Okay. So Dave, that was a very interesting conference. It was a conference where Scott Wyatt, who is the president of Southern Utah State University, actually gave a presentation on the way we make decisions. And I thought, you could look back at some of the things, the decisions that you've made just recently and see that this thing called implicit bias has application in just about every single one of the areas that we're going to talk about tonight, whether it be sexual harassment, or whether it be open meetings, or whether it be conflicts of interest. Implicit bias enters into our decisions and has a real significant effect on the decisions that we make. I'll give you an example. Well, let's define implicit bias first. So implicit bias essentially is not prejudice, explicit prejudice. In other words, it's not something you think about, but it's something that you carry with you in your head as a result of the culture around you, the way you've been brought up, the things that the people you live next to. When you, to give you an example, a person who comes in for a zone change, immediately when you see an individual who comes in for a zone change and you see that this is a neighbor or a friend or a person that you know, your response is completely different than if the person comes in and introduces themselves as being from California, and I've come here to Morgan to develop this area and to make as much money as I possibly can. Because isn't that the way we look at sometimes outsiders who come in to do things like rezone or develop a subdivision that we really don't know? We immediately draw judgments based on our own experience. And so this thing called implicit bias enters into just about everything we do. Could you advance the slide for me there, Ty? Here's a surgeon's dilemma. And Dave, the only one that's not allowed to answer this is Dave. All right, because he spent quite a bit of time, and Dave will know the right answer.
I would say also, Gary, I mean, if anyone else knows the answer, to maybe hold up a little bit so everybody's had a chance to think about it. I did not solve it. So if that helps at all.
And I did not. And well, I'll tell you what the percentages are for solving in just a minute.
Okay.
Here you guys go. A father and his son are in a car accident. The father dies at the scene and the son, badly injured, is rushed to the hospital. In the operating room, the surgeon looks at the boy and says, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son." Who is the surgeon? Think hard about it. Who is the surgeon? Anybody got an idea?
Yeah, I think I know who it is.
Who is it, Mark?
It's the mother.
Very good. Very good. How many of you guessed the mother first? Denise. I knew Denise would, probably Tony, and David. What did the rest of you think? What were some of the thoughts? I'll bet you I know. You were looking for, the way I did, for a stepfather or a grandfather or somebody else, right? Some other type of male figure. And the reason is that you are like 80% of the people who read this puzzle. And that is that you reflect on your experience growing up. The very first doctor you saw, what was it, a male or a female doctor? Probably a male doctor. And the doctors that you've seen throughout the years, what have they most of the time been? Male doctors, right? And so we think of immediately in our mind when this is read, and we kind of set you up. President Wyatt said, you know, we've set you up. We've used the words father, son, and a lot of male terms in this. But what it demonstrates is the implicit bias that a lot of us have built into us as a result of our experiences, of our past experiences. And in order to break out of this, let's turn to the next page. I'm going to give you
Hey,
two.
Gary,
Yes,
can I also offer my bias on this one?
sure.
She says that she can't operate because it's her boy, not I can't operate because my husband just passed away.
That's true. That's true.
So the father and the son both had a car accident. Her husband passed away, but she can't operate because it's her son, not because her husband passed away.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's just a bias. I'm just saying.
No, that's true. You're exactly right. That's good. That's a perspective I hadn't looked at. Thanks, Ty. Now I've got to think about that for a little while.
Yeah.
So the next screen, take a look at these two pictures up top, and we're going to talk a little bit. And you got to know that this presentation took over an hour to present, and I'm going to present it to you in just a few minutes. But take a look at the picture to the left.
You know, Gary, maybe mention too that the presentation is still available. I assume it is on the league website.
Yes, and the very first page of the presentation that has been sent out to you has the link to this presentation.
It's well done.
And it's really worth seeing. As a planning commissioner, as a city council person, it is really worth seeing. It's called Implicit Bias in Making Planning Decisions, is what the whole crux of it was. But
It had a killer moderator too.
Yeah, he limped along. He did limp along.
No, you did a good job.
So take a look at these two pictures. Picture on the left. How long does it take you to determine exactly what you see on the left? Somebody yelling, somebody screaming, somebody angry. You didn't have to think very long to determine that this is somebody who is not happy or is angry or is. So this required, it's a passive thing that you did when you looked at this picture. You based it on whatever impressions that you were used to seeing in the past. It was fast, it was effortless, and you didn't need much skill in order to discern what this guy on the left is feeling. And it was almost automatic. When the screen came up and you looked to the left, your impression was immediate, wasn't it? Is there anybody who had to take a while to take a look at him to see exactly what he's thinking? Nobody. My guess is nobody. Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the human brain processes about 40 frames per second.
Yes, no, you've got it.
And that's conscious, the conscious brain. The unconscious brain, what do you think it processes? Processes about 1.2 million frames per second, which is remarkable. So what was happening the whole time that you were looking at to the left was that your unconscious brain had brought back everything that you'd seen in the past and what you have learned in the past, and it didn't take you even a second to figure out what was going on there. Now take a look to the right. Now on the right-hand side, you've got what? 17 times 24. And so, Dave, you can probably figure this out faster than I can, the way President Wyatt did. But you go, I don't know how you'd do it, but I do 17 times 10
I'd use a calculator.
Okay. Yeah, that's our other brain, our alternate brain.
Yeah.
17 times 10 times 2 times, and then 4 times 17, that's 340 plus 68, that's 408 roughly.
Mhm.
And the example that he gave, the reason he gave this example is because there are two systems of thinking. One is the system that you use when you don't need to think, you don't need to process, and it comes almost immediately to you, exactly the way that the answer came to you in that previous puzzle about the surgeon. Those of you that were stumbling because it was inconsistent with the way that you had approached things and grown up and your experiences and that type of thing. Those of you that got it right away were able to, I mean, it was pretty easy for you because of the way that you thought. System 2 type thinking is effortful. It's deliberate, it's reasoned, it's controlled, and it's slow. In other words, it's something you have to think about. I'm going to ask you about zoning decisions. You've got a room full of people who hate you because of the way that you're going to make a particular zoning decision. And you feel that dislike, you feel that discomfort. And those are emotions that in the past that you've identified as being negative. They're things that you don't like to deal with and don't like to have to deal with. And the individual involved may be a neighbor, it may be a friend, and it's difficult to make that decision. A system 1 decision often is based on the public clamor or the things that you see happening around you, the immediate stimulus that you see around you. For example, if somebody's excited or angry, system 1 decision is always made based on an immediate thought, a thought that is not well thought through. A system 2 decision is one where you're actually forced to think something through, to understand it before you actually make a decision, to listen more than you speak, to try and understand the concept underlying the decision that you're having to make. That's a system 2 decision. And what President Wyatt said is this, that the way that we break this thing called unconscious bias, in other words, the way that we break our biases and the way that we actually grow in this life is by making more and more system 2 type decisions. The way you grow as a planning commissioner is you learn the ordinances that you have to deal with, you understand them, you learn as much as you can about the decision you're having to make, and then you make a decision based on those facts as you put them all together. You listen to all the evidence and you put them all together and you make a decision. A system 1 type decision would be listening to the emotion, getting caught in the emotion and building on the emotion and then making a decision based entirely on the emotions that you're feeling. Do you see the difference between the two? I mean, there's a real distinct difference between the way we make these decisions. It applies to just about everything we're going to talk about tonight. It applies to sexual harassment. If people really thought through the things that they say and the things that they do, we wouldn't even have a sexual harassment problem in most of our situations. But it's when people become involved in very, very quick emotions that are tied to an understanding that comes from their past, or because of the way they've learned to think of something, or because of the culture around them, that poor decisions are actually made. The same thing with open meetings. A lot of times you don't think through whether or not you're doing the public's business in the public, because it's so easy to talk about it outside of the public forum. And if you really thought it through and thought about the rules, you probably would not violate them, and you'd make the right decision. Same thing with conflicts of interest. If you take something for making a decision, then you're impulsively doing something and not thinking it through and not thinking through the rule that applies to it. Let's move to the next screen. So let's talk about sexual harassment first. What do these four guys have in common? None of them are famous anymore. And
They're famous.
in fact, they are infamous
There you go.
now. And they have each paid a great amount financially and personally and probably family-wise for the decisions that they made, the type 1 decision that they have made based on the culture that they experienced and the culture they developed in these organizations that they were members of. So sexual harassment is a big problem. One of the biggest, I think I've mentioned that one of the biggest lawsuits settlements in the state of Utah was $2.4 million. And it was a lawsuit out of West Jordan. And it was because of a retaliation claim by a police officer out in West Jordan. So the police officer first won $81,000 in the initial lawsuit. And then when he came back to work, they persecuted him more. They didn't think it through. They didn't listen to the rules. They persecuted him more for coming back by trying to prosecute him for a felony that he hadn't committed. And they ended up in paying $2.5 million in that lawsuit. So a sexual harassment claim, and even worse, a retaliation claim against a governmental entity can cost a lot of money. Next slide. So the best training for sexual harassment is really has to be tailored to your workplace, and it involves kind of a change in culture. And I'm gonna talk about a different way of talking about sexual harassment tonight. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that with 3 short videos. They're all about 2 minutes long. The 3 are about 2 minutes long. And let me see if this works. And if it works, will you let me share my screen, Ty? Just got to shrink my screen down. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to try this. If it works, it'll be wonderful. There's a company called Grovo. Typically, the way we teach sexual harassment is we teach you that there are 2 types of sexual harassment. There's what they call quid pro quo, or something for something. In other words, where you offer a person of the opposite sex or the same sex these days something for a sexual favor or for something of a sexual nature. The second type of sexual harassment is what they call a hostile environment, where you build within your culture, the culture of your business. And this is very much like those 4 men that you saw on the front, my first slide. You build a culture where that type of thing is acceptable. And then it just grows and grows and until ultimately you end up in getting sued over it. So let me see if I can get this up here. Let's see.
So I
Can you
couldn't
see?
make you the.
Can you let me share my screen? Okay. I went out and said multiple participants can share simultaneously, so
Okay, so go to.
so he should be able to.
Okay, so tell me if you can see this. I'll bring it up. Can you see it?
No, do you have a share screen button at the bottom?
Yeah, I do. Hang on just a second here.
So pull it up first and then click share screen and see if that works.
There it is. Can you see that?
There you go.
Yep, it started.
Okay, so I'm going to play. There will be 3 short clips. The first one talks a little bit about Grovo, the organization that actually presents this. And then the other 2 talk about what sexual harassment is and what it's based on. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this for a series of 10 videos that you can watch. I'm going to share with you the first two. And the reason I'm going to do that is because they describe exactly what it really is and what the basis for it is. And when I watched this for the very first time and I started to think about it, it was very, very true. The basis for sexual harassment has very little to do with sex and everything to do with power. And the type of culture that you create within an organization really dictates whether or not you're going to have a difficult time with this, whether you're going to have a problem with this. So I'm going to play two of these, if that's all right. And then we'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll go on to the next subject here.
Often, when we think about sexual harassment, we think about it this way.
So I was thinking we could talk about that raise we discussed.
Oh, sure. Well, we have a lot to cover today, so we might not have time to get to that right now. Maybe you and I could grab a drink later at the bar across the street and discuss the raise then.
Okay. Is that the best place to go? Want to be kind of loud?
Well, I feel like you and I really need to get to know each other better. Maybe we could go to my place afterwards if we need someplace quiet. Scenes like that do a good, though sometimes awkward job of illustrating one type of sexual harassment. But unfortunately, that stereotypical scenario also ends up narrowing our definition of sexual harassment. Yes, lots of people are propositioned or asked for sexual quid pro quo, but that's not all sexual harassment is.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play the next one. The legal definition of sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and verbal or physical contact of sexual nature that tends to create a hostile or offensive work environment. It's not limited, however, and I want to make this point, it's not just limited to sexual favors and requests, those types of things. It's impossible to list everything that includes, and I'm just going to scan through here real quick. Okay, let me go down to the next one down here. I got to move me, sorry. There we go.
Stories of sexual harassment are often told through the lens of legal liability. We hear about the $32 million paid in settlements to the people Bill O'Reilly harassed, or the $20 million awarded to guards at the Coleman Federal Correctional Complex in Florida. But those are only two cases. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission alone gets approximately 12,000 complaints of sexual harassment filed to them every year. And according to the EEOC, only 25% of people who suffer sexual harassment make any kind of formal complaint. All of these statistics, dollar amounts, volume of complaints, they only paint a small picture of the reality of sexual harassment.
And one more. This is why it happens. You might have heard by now that sexual harassment isn't just about sex, it's about power. And we talked about that just a second ago. And here's an example.
In 2003, researchers at the University of Padova in Italy told a group of men that they'd be participating in an experiment on visual memory. The subjects were asked to choose images to send to a man and a woman, both of whom were imaginary. They were told that the imaginary man and woman would later have to remember what images they were sent. Half of the subjects were told that women were better at the task than men. Those subjects were more likely to send questionable images, like pornography, to the imaginary woman. Basically, when the male subject's power, their traditional masculinity, was threatened, they were more likely to sexually harass. That's what we mean when we say that sexual harassment is about power. It's when someone, it's often a man, but it can certainly be a woman, uses something sexual, in this case pornography, to put someone in their place.
Okay, so do all of you understand and agree with the fact that sexual harassment really has more to do with having power, one person with more power, maintaining that power over another person? And that's really what sexual harassment is all about. That's the basis for it. It often has absolutely nothing to do with sex, but it is used. And I just have to get rid of these screens, sorry. So I can get back to Ty's screen. Okay, Ty, can you put let's see. Okay, can you take me forward to, let's see.
We're on number 7.
Okay, take me forward to 7. So what everybody knows about sexual harassment, everybody knows about if I go up to somebody and offer them an advancement, I happen to be their supervisor, and I say, I'll give you an advancement, or I'll increase your pay, but it's going to cost you. And I mean, that's the most simple type of sexual harassment. It's what I call the Harvey Weinstein variety, where you invite somebody up to your apartment, and for a favor that you do, you require that they do something for you. The more common is the hostile work environment, and that's the one that I'm focused on, or that we're focused on, and that this presentation was focused on tonight. It's more prevalent than you think, and it can be and can involve males or females in any particular situation. In fact, the West Jordan case was a male police officer, and who was harassed by his fellow police officers, and ended up in costing a lot of money. So hostile work environment's the most common, and that's the type of environment that we're talking about, where that in a culture, you've always got individuals who have more power over other individuals. And those are the situations that you have to be very, very careful of. Yeah. The culture of an organization begins at the top, and the way that the culture is handled and the acceptance of sexual harassment or harassing type behavior, really it is something that their philosophy towards it actually starts at the top of the organization, and is permeated all the way down through. Go ahead and shift to the next slide.
So Gary, just when we say hostile work environment, is that of a sexual nature though?
It is.
Yeah, there could be a lot of work environments that aren't pleasant, but yet may not be illegal.
So sexual harassment does involve just harassment based on sexual innuendos, advances, comments, jokes, those types of things. But other types of harassment are also unconstitutional and subject to the same type of lawsuit. For example, harassment over a race, harassment over religion, harassment over even things like the fact that somebody's large in size, or there's just all kinds of harassment that are actionable. But the most common, and that's the reason we're talking about it tonight, and Dave, to your point, they're all forms of harassment, and they all involve the same principle, and that is that the exercise of power by somebody who has it over somebody who is in a lesser position. I've seen a mayor on an occasion literally come into a department and intimidate, in one of the cities that I worked for, the individuals whenever he came into that department. I've seen that same mayor on a parade day on July 4th yell at a young lady, 16 years old, who was reserving the spot for the grand marshal of the parade because the mayor thought that he should be able to park there. And it gave him some type of I guess, power surge to be able to yell at a 16-year-old about a parking spot. And even though he didn't use the word female or girl or anything else, it was clear that it was her position as a 16-year-old young lady that had caused, that gave him the power surge, or the feeling of power when he yelled at her. And those types of things, like I say, start at the top. And the philosophy that an organization has really begins at the top. So sexual harassment, an organization can empower their employees to spot the symptoms, identify the symptoms, and then encourage your employees to be active bystanders, to do something about it, and help them identify things like unconscious bias, statements that are made that they may not realize that they're making. And one of the ways of doing that is by building a culture of including everybody, including both male, female, whether they're your subordinates or not. To be able to be inclusive actually kills this thing that we call sexual harassment. So is this making sense to everybody? Go to the next slide, Ty. So the expectations, I know in Morgan and in Layton, are that everybody needs to be working in an environment that is free of harassment. I think Ty has indicated a number of times, and Alex, my city manager, has indicated that there will be a zero tolerance for sexual harassment in the workplace. They need a safe way to report it. And one of the ways of reducing your damages in a lawsuit is making sure that there's a very fast and safe way for people to report sexual harassment. And then the important one is freedom from retaliation, because retaliation will bring a much greater liability on the institution and also the individual. And I guess the bottom line is that the city just has to show through its management, and I've got to tell you that Ty does this, and Denise does this, and the others, Mark, when he was here, did the same thing, shows that it is taken very, very seriously. Morgan is one of the cities that does take this seriously. Any questions on sexual harassment? We spent a little more time on that than the others, but we'll flip through the others very, very quickly. I think this is an important one because it's the one that costs the city the most if the city is ever involved in litigation involving it. Okay, on to open public meetings. And if you look at your slides, the slides in your open, any questions on, you're welcome to put questions in the chat room. Raise your hand if I can see you.
So Gary, I was just going to make a quick comment.
Please.
On that harassment, just so the council knows that that's kind of a role of the council, that all of the employees have access to a council member, and you may be in that position where you get a complaint, or if somebody for some reason doesn't feel comfortable talking to me or their supervisor, or it involves me, I think it's a team effort that way as well. And so just be prepared. I just don't want you to mentally think, oh good, we have a city manager and he's going to run the city a certain way, or build that culture, but it also comes from the council support, and the employees knowing that they have that other layer of support or oversight, if you want to call it that. So it is important to understand that, and then be ready to help out in your own role as city council members.
And it also involves you're observing what happens with individuals who are outside the office, who come into the office or into the city. You know, as planning commission members, if you see somebody going over to Teresa, for example, who, you know, who keeps the minutes of those meetings, and you notice that there's some type of power play going on there, you as planning commission members have an obligation to identify it and to put an end to it, essentially to report it and to put an end to it. And reporting it doesn't necessarily mean, a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it. It just simply means that intervening and making sure that the individual knows that that type of activity is not acceptable. You can do it in a nice way. That doesn't, most of the time, you'll get an apology because they didn't realize they were doing it. But what it really comes down to is that little thing called implicit bias that we talked about to begin with. There's a certain mindset sometimes of people. When a person's sitting at a desk or behind a counter, they immediately suppose that that person sometimes can be yelled at because you're the citizen and they're the paid public employee. And so you'll see sometimes that type of thing happening as a result of that little thing we called implicit bias and we talked about before the meeting, whereas if they thought it through and used the type 2 approach, you know, they would be able to figure out that you don't do that. And what you do is you try to bring them back to that, to understanding that what they're doing is not acceptable. Any other questions on that? Okay, open public meetings. What I did was I wrote a series of questions, and there are, how many slides, Ty? There's probably about 7 slides. I'm not going to go through 7 slides for you. What I did was I put in each of these slides, I put the questions that people sometimes ask regarding open meetings. And Ty, if you just want to scan through them, just slowly, they're just questions. And right after, because I knew you'd be bored hearing my voice for more than half an hour, I put the answer to those questions. What I did want to kind of focus on a little bit was maybe some of the things around these questions that you may have wondered about. For example, one of the very first meetings that I ever attended was in Summit County, and there were 3 Summit County commissioners, and I was representing a developer who had come in for development approval up in Summit County. And there was a brand new zoning format called performance zoning. And these 3 commissioners, the whole time that they were in front were listening to my client's presentation, were whispering back and forth amongst each other. And I could see them shaking their heads. I could see them agreeing with each other, and I could see them discussing my client's plan behind the podium. And none of this made it onto the record. And so I brought it to their attention. And quite frankly, they became offended by it. But it's that type of thing that we don't consider as being a violation of the Open Meetings Act that is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. The whole idea, and I'm just going to give you the rule of thumb, the whole idea of open meetings is that the public's business shall be done in a meeting that is open to the public and where the public has the opportunity of hearing. And if it is a hearing, if it isn't actually a hearing, to be heard on a particular matter. There are many items that don't require a hearing. And in those situations, the public doesn't necessarily have an opportunity to respond immediately. They can always petition their city council people and planning commission with written materials, but open meetings means that that when you deliberate on my client's case, when they deliberated on my client's case, that they needed to deliberate in public and not behind the podium or the dais. The other instance that occurs quite often is after the meeting, Everything's finished. And what's the immediate thing you look at doing is you want to talk to each other. You stick around, you talk to each other. But if a quorum of you are sitting around talking to each other about something you are making a decision about on the agenda, in other words, you're staying afterwards because you've continued a hearing on whatever it happens to be. And 3 of you, or in the case of the planning commission, there's 7 planning commission members, aren't there? 7. So if a majority or a quorum of you end up in staying behind and talking about the issue, or if you plan a meeting and meet together on an issue that you are making a decision on, you're violating the Open Meetings Act. And violations of the Open Meetings Act can actually bring both criminal penalties and a reversal of the decision that you actually have made. These are the penalties. And so be very, very careful with that. A question for you. I'm a planning commissioner or a city council person, and I would like to communicate with another city council person. Can I get on my phone and text that person while the meeting's going on? Is that fair? You allowed to do that? All those who say yes, raise their hand. Okay. I didn't think anybody would raise their hand, but seriously. But that is done more often than not. And actually the legislature closed that loop by saying you can't communicate with your electronic device with each other because that constitutes a meeting. You're discussing the public's business by text or over the phone is what you're doing. How about communication with individuals that are not at the dais? In other words, they're not city council people. Can you take a text from individuals who have opinions on something?
During the meeting?
During the meeting.
I would say yes.
Okay. And the answer is yes, you can. You're allowed to take those, but what is the best practice? Somebody's going to see you looking down at your phone and texting back, and they're going to accuse you of texting another member on the commission or in the city council. So the best thing to do is when you receive comments from individuals, if you do want to take them by phone, the best practice is probably to wait until after. But if you do want to take them by phone, is to indicate that you have just received a text from a citizen, and this is what the text says. But texting each other you're not allowed to do. You cannot text each other during the meetings.
Larry,
Yes,
may I ask a question?
sure.
I know you've talked about this in the past, and of course, some of us have gone through this extensively for years, but I run into Dave Alexander over at Ridley's, and there's he and I, the 2 of us. We start discussing something that's upcoming in a city council meeting. How about that?
Okay. You and Dave discussing the issue at Ridley's is fine until somebody else, another council member walks up, until Eric walks up.
Right.
And then when Eric walks up, you essentially have a quorum. The way the law reads, it says that a meeting is an incident which is convened for the purpose of carrying on the public's business. And of course, convening sounds very official, but convening can be as simple as, hey, Eric, come on over, and Dave, come on over, let's discuss this together. And so you got a quorum that is essentially discussing the business of the city in Ridley's, and that would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. But 2 of you together, you have the right to discuss outside of a meeting with another planning commission member or another city council person an issue that is on the agenda. That's not outside of the purview of what you're allowed to do. The courts are more tolerant of city council people doing that simply because city council people were elected to listen to constituents. They are less tolerant of planning commissioners, quite frankly, who do that. simply because the planning commission has a different duty. And their duty is to essentially support the city's ordinance. And they are not elected. They don't have a responsibility to a constituency. They have a responsibility to the ordinance. So if a planning commission member went to a neighborhood meeting, for example, that would be very inappropriate for a planning commissioner to go to a neighborhood meeting on their own, to listen to what the neighbors said, and knowing that that issue would be on the agenda at an upcoming time, and they'd have to make a decision on it. City council person, if they were to go to a neighborhood meeting, they could do that. I wouldn't advise it, because you get caught in a very difficult situation where you have heard something that the rest of the council has not heard. But you do have that flexibility as a result of being a council person, of being able to listen to those things. But if you do happen to do that, you need to disclose at the meeting, at the beginning of the item, that you have been to a meeting and that you have actually talked about this subject with those neighbors at that time. And once again, I strongly suggest that you don't do that, because what's going to happen is somebody's going to get up and they're going to say, when I was at that meeting, Lance, man, he agreed with everything I said. And he agreed with this, and he said the streets ought to be smaller, and he did this, that, and the other thing. And Lance is going to be sitting up there with the rest of the planning commission, all sitting around him going, really? Did you really do that? And they're going to put words in your mouth. And so my advice to you is to stay away from those, what they call outside meetings. Any questions on that by any chance?
Yeah, I've got a question. So I know you said planning commission members is frowned upon more than city council members. Now, if I was to see Tony or Jeff and we talked about something that was going on, is that a big no-no, or is that where planning commission to city council, is that okay?
That's a great question. And the way the courts have looked at that, as it would be the same as two city council people talking together, because you are essentially appointed by the city council to make decisions on behalf of the city. You are the defenders of the city's ordinance. That's what you are. And so for you to talk to a city council person would be fine. If you see three of them standing together, just remind them that there's a quorum and that you can't talk to them.
Yeah, where I work for the city as well, I think if I see three city council members, I'm probably going to turn around and go the other way instead of wandering over to the group.
Good idea. Good idea. Any other questions on that? Okay, should we go to the last item? And there's only there's 3 slides. I thought this one was a good slide. All of you know Chuck Norris. I represent injured people. Conflicts of interest is the next subject. Next slide. Thanks. So a conflict of interest in the state of Utah is something that you declare yourself unless you have actually committed a crime. For example, you have taken money for making a decision, or you have done something that would be classified as a misdemeanor or a felony. Conflicts of interest are pretty much determined by you as individuals. They are declared in a document called a conflicts of interest statement, and all of you should fill one of those out at the beginning of every year, and just make sure all of the organizations that you're associated with are listed in that conflicts of interest form. And make sure that if your situation changes and you now have an association with a different kind of business that does business with the city, or that is attempting to do business with the city, that you or may do business with the city, make sure you fill out that conflict of interest form. The best thing to do with a conflict of interest, rather than going through every different kind of conflict that they've listed in the conflicts of interest section, I'm just going to give you a rule of thumb. And that is that if there's the appearance of bias in the decision you're about to make, in other words, as to whether or not you can make a decision that will be unaffected by some type of financial interest in the decision. And that's really what the courts look at, is they look at whether or not there's a pecuniary or financial interest in it. You should stay off the dais. I raise it to one level higher than that. And I say that if there's any kind of look of bias that may be attributed to you as a result of the decision you're going to make that night, then you ought to step down from the dais. Now, having said that, I'm going to tell you that in the city of Morgan, you're going to come across individuals who file applications with you. You're going to come across individuals who have strong feelings about rezones, about subdivisions, about everything else. Does that mean you have to exclude yourself if you happen to be a friend of somebody who feels very strongly about an application one direction or another? And the answer is no. That is not the case, because you wouldn't ever be able to make a planning decision. Isn't that right, Mayor? Wouldn't be able to make a planning decision because of everybody you know, if you've been mayor for or a council person for as long as Mayor Little has been on the council. And so it's one of those situations where if you don't think you can make an unbiased decision, or if there's an appearance, then you ought to stay away from it. And when I say step down, I do mean step down. Remove yourself from the room until the actual conversation or discussion on the item is over. It doesn't mean stay there during the discussion and go away for the decision, because your presence there often means that there's pressure on the other planning commission members to actually make a decision in your favor or in favor of the person that you're favoring. Next slide. I'll give you an illustration of one that happened in Layton just recently. There were two city council people, 2 out of the 5, that one of them felt that they had a conflict of interest. But here are the circumstances of 2 of them. One of them was a farmer, and the applicant had land that he farmed all the time, that he leased from the applicant. And they had been friends for years, and he had actually used his barn to store his onions when he farmed, and he paid him money for the storage of those onions. And the individual applicant also paid him money, the city council person money, for some of the work that he did in plowing his fields. And there he was, and he wanted a rezone in an area that was residential to manufacturing, because he wanted to put a more intense use, agricultural use on the property. How many of you would have stepped down in that circumstance? Any of you?
Probably would have.
Probably would have. Thanks, Dan. That's true. And Teresa would have. So if Teresa would, the rest of you better. The other guy, the other city council person, was on the opposite end of the rope. There's a new subdivision that is being built around this man's property, around the exterior of this man's property. And this city council person had put money down on a lot right next to the property that they wanted to zone, that this man wanted zoned manufacturing. How many of you would have stepped down in that situation? You're just purchasing a lot, but the implication of what that lot would be worth may be affected by whether or not you zone that property manufacturing or not, right? Would any of you step down in that circumstance?
So,
Dan? Maybe Nathan and Eric? Would have been the right thing to do. Now, do you have to legally? The answer is probably not. The only one that I would think is suspect is the one where the 2 were exchanging money because of the jobs that they both held and the business transactions between the 2. I think that may have been a little suspect. But once again, rule of thumb, if it looks like you could be biased in making the decision, stay away from it. So here are the things not to do. Don't tell secrets. If you were in a meeting where you find out, for example, in a council meeting, a closed meeting, information that would line your pockets, make sure that you don't ever use that information in a closed meeting in a way that would be inappropriate and would cause a conflict of financial or bring a pecuniary benefit to you. Don't line your pockets, don't sell your vote, and don't sell your position. I had a mayor who used to go into a restaurant all the time, and every single time they would try and put him right at the front. And because he was the mayor, and they put him at the front of the line, and everybody else had been waiting for a seat would be put to the rear of the line. And he always refused that, just simply because he felt that because of his position, they were doing something for him that they would not have done for anybody else. And so he always refused that. Next slide. And this is the last one. Make sure you fill out your conflicts of interest form. Make sure that if you have a conflict with somebody who's making a presentation, or if you have talked to somebody during the week about an application that could involve you financially, tell the mayor and the council. In the public meeting, tell the mayor and the council of the conflict that you have. This is the minimum that you have to do. And then ask yourself, will this bias my vote? And if the answer is yes, then avoid even the appearance and step down. Any questions on conflicts of interest?
Gary, would you talk just briefly about gifts? Not that it's a problem, but limitations and, for example, is going to lunch with somebody okay?
So state law indicates that a gift of $50 or over is not appropriate, and it is a violation of the conflicts of interest law. I believe Morgan and just about every city I have done work with has prohibited the receipt of anything that beyond just a pen or just a minor gift is inappropriate to accept. And when I say minor gift, I talk about things that they give out to anybody that comes in. So if you got an engineering firm that gives out pens to everybody because it's part of their marketing, I don't think that would violate the law. But if they give you a one of Wes's wood-turned gold pens, gold rim pens, and that would be a violation of the conflicts of interest. So the best rule of thumb on gifts is not to take them, but every once in a while, by virtue of the fact that you work at the city, there's going to be a t-shirt that they're giving out to everybody or something of that nature. I think somebody called and asked, there was a gift certificate for a restaurant that was given to everybody in the engineering department in Layton City. And Layton City has a no gift policy. And so they took those cards and they essentially donated them to the food bank, to individuals who needed a meal. And that's the way that they handled that. Every once in a while, you're going to get caught in a corner where all of a sudden you'll have something delivered to you or something of that nature that is outside of the city business. Things that you do for your employees don't count. The gifts that you give an employee for working with the city, those types of things are considered internal gifts, and they're not counted. Does that help?
Yeah. For example, a developer brings lunch to city employees. Are we okay?
Lunch to city employees. So it's there, and there's not a lot you can do.
Yeah.
That's not something you can take down to the food bank.
Right.
And I'd certainly discourage it. Ty, what is the policy of the city relative to that type of thing?
Yeah, so it's the same $50 rule, but more important, it's kind of like the focus of the harassment training, where now it's not, here's a list of everything that counts and here's a list of everything that doesn't count, right? Like harassment used to be more of a checklist, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's outside the boundaries. Now it's more focused on the intent, right? So
Right.
just if you have no decision-making authority and it's just like we have a contract with our engineering firm,
Mhm.
and they'll take us to lunch once a year. And a lot of that isn't in order to receive the contract for engineering. It's a thank you back to the city for all of the efforts of the employees that work really close to them. And so that would be, in my mind, appropriate, where if we had a bid out to select an engineering firm, and the candidates that we're trying to get a 5-year contract or whatever we're trying to, we're at a point of decision or in a decision-making authority. So same with a city council, right? Like, do you accept jazz tickets or whatever it is? It's not the $50. Of course, $50 is one of those big red flags, but if it's something worth $20, but they're, if you're selling your vote, I guess is where, like on the previous one, that a lot of it's the intent, but just the fact that they are a developer, you have a relationship with a company or something like that, it sometimes lunch is an appropriate place to have a meeting. So anyway, we don't really have, I don't have any examples. Since I've been here, I haven't seen any inappropriate gifting or anybody trying to have influence over city personnel.
Yeah. I did see at one point, just to give an example, the individual who actually made the determination of who the engineering firm would be for the city. The engineering firm had a trailer that they had no longer any use for. It was an enclosed trailer. And he had an old antique car that he would use all the time and show in shows, and needed an enclosed trailer, and they gave him that enclosed trailer. What do you think?
Thumbs down.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. He lost his job over that.
Yeah.
And is no longer employed with the city. So I guess the best rule of thumb is if you're doing business with somebody and under $50 is the state law. I think under $50, like Ty says, you can look at the intent. And if it's just simply a box of apples or lunch, sandwiches or something of that nature, and it is under the gift limit, you still have to ask the question of whether or not this would affect your decision one way or another. But I'm thinking under $50 and a sandwich probably is not going to buy an engineering firm a contract, but who knows? If you think it will, then you probably ought not to accept it, right? Okay. That's a great question. Thanks, Dave. Any other questions? And I think we've concluded, and I hope you've gotten something out of it. I hope it was useful.
Well done. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, you guys.
Any other question for Gary? Okay, like was mentioned earlier, if you would like to view the whole thing, it's available. Link was sent out. If you have questions, you can contact Denise, and Denise can get that to you if you'd like to see the whole presentation that was put out earlier. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Planning Commissioners, you're welcome to stay if you would like to. We'll proceed with our meeting. Don't feel obligated to have to stay, but you're welcome to stay if you'd like to. Okay, next item on the agenda, I'm going to turn over to Tony to discuss this. Happens to be the final approval of Rhinell Business Park amended plat number 4. So Tony, would you discuss that for us, please?
yes, this was discussed last week in Planning Commission. It has to do with the Rhinell Business Park, a lot over there that has been requested to be divided. The property is over on Industrial Road, consists of an acre and 3/4. The proposed plat amendment divides the existing parcel into 2 separate parcels. The applicant intends to build a 3-unit industrial flex building on the smaller of the 2 lots, as you can see on your screen on the map. The one lot is 56,709 square feet. The smaller lot would be 20,248 square feet, which is about half an acre a lot. Good to note that the MD zone does not have a minimum lot area size or minimum frontage requirements. The plat amendment complies with the physical development standards as outlined in 11.02 and 11.06 of the Morgan City Municipal Code. Also, the setbacks, minimum lot coverage, landscaping, and height requirements for the proposed building, they will be addressed with the applicant during the site plan review process. So last week on January 19th, 2021, the Planning Commission unanimously recommended the council approve the plat amendment for the Rhinell Business Park.
Is there any discussions on that item? Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor,
Tony,
I would make a motion that we approve of the final approval, the Rhinell Business Park amended plat number 4.
is there a second?
Second.
Ty, could you take that share screen down so you can see the rest of them? Okay, second by Jeff. So motion by Tony, second by Jeff, that we give final approval of the Rhinell Business Park amendment plat number 4. Is there any discussion on that motion? Got any questions? Ryan's on the Zoom call with us. Any questions for Ryan? You're welcome to ask Ryan. If any other questions or discussion, we'll hear that. If not, we'll proceed to vote. Not seeing any other discussion. Okay. Since this is not a resolution which goes to go by vote, please raise your hand so I can see who's voting. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. All 4 voted. No anybody opposed. Therefore, the motion passed with 4 in favor. Might note that Jeff Richards had to leave the meeting until Jeff is not here, but 4 of us voted in favor of that approval, that final approval. Thank you on that item. Okay, next item on agenda, number 5. Ty, would you introduce our guest to us and introduce the concept of item number 5?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if they're logged on. I've been screen sharing, and so I kind of lost my whole setup here.
Yeah, I don't
Like
see.
my view is different. I think Anissa was on before, and then I think they're trying to log on right now. They're having an internet problem.
Okay. We can let's move to another item for a minute while they're logging on. Denise, would you talk just a minute about that fraud assessment, what we need to do with that, and discuss that while they're logging on?
Okay. This is some more training. Last year, the state auditor's office started the fraud risk assessment. There's a questionnaire that we have to answer, and the number 5 asks if the governing body members have completed the online training. The state auditor's office provides this training. Ty, can you show the assessment questionnaire? Or let me see, maybe I can do it. No, I can't. You have that one that just says training?
Is it not that one?
That one, thank you.
And you're really testing my sharing capabilities tonight.
You're doing good. You're awesome. So I reached out to the state auditor's office, but I haven't got an answer back from Seth yet. It says, who must complete? It's all governing body members. And it says elected or appointed. I'm trying to find out if the planning commission members are going to be required to take this training. They need to take it once in the last 4 years. So basically, every time you're reelected, we have to have you take this training. Last year, the mayor and David took it, and I have their certificates. I don't know if anyone else did. So if you did, please let me know so that I can mark you off, because you only have to do it once every 4 years. or every year you're elected or appointed. The state auditor provides the training, and they also track it. So down, if you go to trainingauditor.utah.gov, then click on the picture that says introductory training for municipal officials 2021. You'll go click on the view course. Takes about an hour to an hour and a half. There's, I believe, 7 videos that you need to watch and take a small assessment. And then you'll be given your certificate and email that to me. And then when we turn in our fraud risk assessment, then we will get 20 points this year. We didn't get 20 points last year, but we still got a good number on our assessment. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey Denise, could you send us an email that describes what you just told us, how to get there?
Yep, I'll send you that training that has all the links to it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, Ty, looks like we have,
Let's see.
Anissa Brown. There they
Yeah,
are.
Anissa. Anissa, is James, are you both logged on the same login?
They're muted.
Can you hear us now?
Yep. Are you both logged on the same?
Yeah, we're just using one computer.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll go ahead and do introductions. So pretty excited about this. The county has established what's called the CED board, or the County Economic Development Board, and the state has given that board discretion over an economic development grant, and the board decided to solicit for an economic development contract. And so Ebert Solutions is James Ebert and Anissa Brown, who are with us tonight. I apologize, Anissa, for messing your name up just then. But anyway, so they have the contract to help us do economic development countywide. And so tonight we have them here to do an introduction. I've met with them a handful of times, and really am excited about the approach that they take. And I think their ability to connect a lot of the dots that exist between the city, the county, the chamber, the business development center, and other interested community groups. So with that, I'll turn the time over to James and Anissa.
Well, thank you, Ty. And again, appreciation to Mayor Little and the City Council for letting us take a couple minutes of your time. We are super excited to be here. I'm excited to have Anissa on board. She has 17 to 20 years in the outdoor recreation market and hoteliers and destination development, and she's really an asset to our partnership. And so I'm just excited she was willing to come on board and be a part of this team. We want the city to know that we look at the county as an entire kind of a landmark, with the city being kind of the jewel in the middle. And there's tremendous value and opportunity within Morgan City. And Ty has been great to reach out to us and really start kind of creating that relationship so we can be working together. We're really looking at ourselves as more of a community connecting point. We have about 7 phases we're going to go through, and the first 2 really have to do with evaluating where the county is, and then looking at what the identity is and trying to figure out some executable strategies. And after spending about 2 to 3 months, we kind of landed in 3 very crucial areas, we think, because the county is going to be subject to growth already. just because of Wasatch Peaks and COVID's kind of changed how people look at cities, to be honest with you, and they're going to start moving out to more rural communities. And so understanding the heritage and the rural open space feel of Morgan, how can we address this growth, but still kind of keep that feel? And I think that's really going to be one of our focuses. So at this point, we've really looked at 3 areas. And the first is private developments and how they impact the tax structure, but have a very little demand on services. And we'll be working with Wasatch Peak as they start to kind of roll out their development. But the second and third area, I think, are areas that are very important to Morgan City, and that is commercial growth and retail growth. And there's been kind of a drop in the last 9 to 10 years on some of that commercial growth, which for a city sometimes can be challenging because a large percentage of your revenues that you create are through sales tax. So how can we help the commercial growth and the retail growth in a manner that Morgan City wants to grow, and how can we assist you on different levels, whether it's a local level or county level or a state level? And we've already kind of started that. We've been working closely with Scott Parkinson over at the hotel and helping him kind of assist with his daily room sales, and start the process of working on marketing and how can we package those rooms with other opportunities within the community. We've been working with some individuals on maybe the possibility of some restaurants. I know that the whopping $500 that you get from TRT is maybe more than you want, but we want to get those dollars up to where it becomes something that you can put in your budget and you can rely on. And as we watched Ogden really grow out their TRT, it became a big component of their indirect sales, their indirect economic impact, because those TRT dollars were leveraged to continue creating more growth within the tourism and outdoor recreation market. And then helping the county and Morgan City in its destination management, helping better understand how we can build out tourism and how tourism or outdoor recreation opportunities really help build amenities within your community. So walking paths, areas on the river we make a little more accessible so you can get in and out, those types of things, understanding our destination, help build that out, will help to grow your tourism and your TRT dollars. And that kind of feeds into our last area, which is tourism and outdoor recreation. We're looking at starting a DMO, which stands for Destination Management Organization. There's like $3 billion every year that comes into the state through outdoor recreation and tourism, and Morgan County is getting 0.1% of that. That's a very, very small amount. And you are fortunate to have the environment right now. You already have many of those tourists driving through Morgan County. We're just not capturing it. So we're going to really work on finding better ways to capture those dollars and those individuals as they come into Morgan County, and then kind of create a destination so that they want to be here. They come in, spend dollars, and they leave, which has a positive impact, but no service load, which service load usually ends up being a cost to the county. And then really looking at the areas within the city and the county where we're just not maximizing opportunity, like the Weber River, and some of the other areas within the county. But this river that you have running through the city and the county is just this jewel, not only for the residents and for others who come in, but to be able to capture some of those dollars, again, that helps with your revenue sources. So we're excited in those 3 areas, and we think 2 of them really hit into Morgan City. But we also want to help with the general plan update, and Ty's reached out to us, and we'll be a resource wherever we can to help the city in that general plan update. And we want to really reconnect the county to the city in a very positive manner. The new county commission, I think, is a little more open to an investment type of mentality, and understanding again that Morgan City is just this amazing jewel in the middle of Morgan, I think is something that will create a little more connectivity and a little more positive synergy for the 2 entities working together. And then we're going to really try to work to help do more coordination between the chamber, the COG, the CED, maybe state agencies and entities we can work with Ty on to help, bring in and leverage those grant dollars that are out there and legislative dollars, and then surrounding counties. And then the last thing that I'll touch base on, and then wonderful if you want to ask some questions, is, we want to help, again, restore or maintain the heritage and the communal feel that you have up here in Morgan. I think it's important to understand what the citizens want, number one. And when we look at deliverables, of course, we're looking at things like improved sales tax, really building out those TRT numbers, and getting that and leveraging those dollars to continue to have positive growth, building and helping assist in the infrastructure growth, and building amenities into the community. And again, we're just excited to be here, and we want you to feel, and we want Ty and the mayor to feel, if there's anything we can do for you, you feel super comfortable in reaching out, and we'll partner wherever we can, and we'll leverage whatever relationships or dollars that we can to help, move your agenda and your needs forward as a city. So that's kind of our initial after 3 or 4 months. We'd love to come in at a future date and maybe give you a little more comprehensive view of some of our plans. Gary did a great job, but I don't think you want to have another 45-minute presentation. So we'll keep it short today and hope for an invite to come back to maybe talk specifically of what we can do within Morgan City to help meet your goals and your vision. Happy to answer any questions.
Mayor, I have a comment or a question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Tony.
Scott called me last night, Scott Parkinson, and I told him, and I'll tell you, James, and he said the same thing. Maybe I'm it's none of my business, but I mentioned to Scott, and I'll just bounce this off of you. Last night, I said, I've thought a lot about the hotel. And I said, well, Scott, I says, I've wondered to myself, would it make sense in some way to maybe package the hotel with the golf course or running the river or making some sort of a package, to come to Morgan for a night or two and include some of those recreational amenities in with that package? Does that, from a marketing standpoint, does that make any sense?
Yes, so a lot of that is really handled by what they call a DMC, and that's usually more of your travel agencies. They will reach out and they'll work directly with different vendors within the community, and then they'll create those packages. The DMO, which is really what we're looking at building out, is really more of a global look at it. I mean, we want to help, and we'll help anywhere we can, and if we need to get more into in granular, like you're talking, Councilman, we'll be happy to do that. But usually what happens is your destination marketing companies will put those packages together, and we don't want to kind of compete with them, right? Because they're small businesses. But what we would do is we would help build out the infrastructure. So when people come in, they have places to go fishing, with outfitters. They have places to go hunting with outfitters. There are bike paths if they want to go biking or mountain biking, building out the infrastructure, and then marketing Morgan as a destination for outdoor recreation. That's really a little more global on the aspect of marketing, and then allowing your DMCs, which are again your destination companies, to package all those together. So yes, it's a great idea, and you have a couple companies right now within Morgan that are starting that process with the hotel. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the drawbacks here in Morgan County is, I mean, clearly I don't know what percentage of Morgan County is privately owned, but I think it's rather high.
Yes,
And
sir.
so
I think it's 97%.
We got a beautiful Wasatch back over here, but we don't have snowmobile trailheads or hiking trailheads or ATV trails, and
that's what we do. So, Councilman, that's what we do. So we help to identify areas where we could have snowmobile pullouts and unload zones, and then work on acquiring land or working with landowners to create paths, and whether they're snowmobile trails or whether they're mountain bike trails or hiking trails or backpacking or whatever it may be. That's what the DMO will do, and then it will take, once that infrastructure is built in, then it will take the approach of marketing that out to the community, and then out along the Wasatch Front and even out regionally, throughout, the western states. And so that, what you just described, is more of what the DMO would do, which is what we're trying to build out through the economic development and tourism package that we have. And then what we would do then is let the DMC, which is the private businesses, actually put the packages of the hotel mixed in with the outfitters and then maybe some other type of experience as a $6,000 package where they come in and then they actually meet them at the airport, drive them down, set them up at the hotel, introducing them to the outfitters, and then they have that experience. So, but before they can even do that, we've got to create the infrastructure, so we then have a product for them to sell.
I agree.
But by creating infrastructure, what are you talking about? What are the components of that infrastructure?
You betcha. So as Councilman just kind of referenced, we have all this amazing snow terrain, right? But at this point, do we have accessible snowmobile trails? Do we have accessible areas for you to unload? And to be honest, do we have restaurants and hotels and enough gas stations to capture the individuals when they come in to do that? Because if they just come in and use it and leave, we don't capture any of that sales tax, that gas tax, which helps with our road maintenance, maybe TRT dollars, which helps to continue to build out the infrastructure. So what we look at doing is identifying areas that have amazing terrain and then working with landowners to give us some right of way, maybe working with the county on building out a parking area, right? And then once we have a parking area where they can unload, we have snowmobile trails that we have the right of way and easements to use. We have connectivity across public and private lands, or maybe what we do is ask the state to buy or purchase some land. Then we actually have a product because we build out the infrastructure. Then when we have a product, we allow the DMCs or the destination marketing companies to then use that product and then package it, with the hotel to come stay 3 nights. And you can go with this outfitter for 3 nights of snowmobiling, and we have dinners over at the Red Rock Cafe or whatever restaurant is in the area. And then we capture them when they come in for gas. We capture them at 3 nights of food, 3 nights of hotel stay, the outfitter, the pay for the outfitters. And then if they're unlucky enough to break down, then they're getting their snowmobile fixed, and those types of things. That's what we kind of mean by helping to build out that infrastructure. Or I'll give you another quick one. Say over time, we're able to turn Commercial Street into maybe several restaurants, and maybe there's several nicer restaurants. And so we want to have kind of an experience, because people they'll drive all the way to Salt Lake to go out to dinner for an anniversary or something, right? People don't mind driving 30 or 40 minutes for good food and an experience. So we give them this great food, and then we have these nice, beautiful walking paths where they can walk for 35 or 40 minutes with their spouse that walks them down by the river. There's a place for them to sit, and there's an overlook. We just want to create opportunity and experience for people to capture the amazing environment that Morgan and Morgan City have. And then what occurs is we start to become a destination. So then people will say, hey, next Thursday or next Friday, it's our date night. Let's run up to that nice little restaurant in Morgan and go for that walk again. That was awesome. Or something that Ty has talked to us about is how can we help kind of create events throughout the year where people want to come to Morgan and Morgan City to experience that, right? So let's go up to the Balloon Festival. Let's go up to this event or this event. Let's go up to the German Food Festival that's every year in Morgan along Commerce Street. So Commercial Street. Those are the types of things that we're talking about, of building out infrastructure or building out a destination or building out an experience.
Any further questions from council or planning commission members as well? I'd invite you to participate if you'd like to. Any other questions for Mr. Ebert?
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll be in touch, James. Oh, is Anissa there?
Yeah, you're not gonna introduce Anissa?
Yeah, introduce Anissa to us.
Nice to meet all of you. We're excited to be here and excited to work with each of you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll let you hit off.
Okay, next item on our agenda, item number 6. So you've read that's a resolution. Maybe what that is working with James and Nisa. Part of what they're looking at is that interchange in Mountain Green. And what this kind of does is give us the opportunity, if we should want to participate with and show support to the county in interchange in Mountain Green. And there's been a lot of discussion on that through the years. A lot of things have been taking place with that one. As you looked at that, I'll let you give some input and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. From the council, any discussion or thoughts on the interchange Mountain Green and the city supporting that concept?
Ray, is there a cost associated with it?
Sorry, Dave, break it up. Say it again, please.
Is there a cost associated with the resolution?
Not this resolution itself. It's merely a support of that activity of the interchange.
I mean, if it did require funding of some sort, then that'd just be addressed separately down the road.
Well, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Ty or James, is funding at this point, they're looking at coming from state funds, UDOT funds, and legislative funds as far as the potential to for the interchange. At this point, what they're talking about is environmental study at this point.
And just a little bit more background. So I attend the CED board meetings, and this has been on the county's economic development plan for quite some time, but the county hasn't always been unanimous on the support for the interchange. And after James and Anissa came to the table, that part of their contract is just to try and move that needle forward a little bit on the interchange. And during the discussion, what we talked about at CED was it would be really nice to show a united front from our elected officials, which we've never done formally. And so the city's position on it isn't because it's a city project or anybody's really asking the city. I don't think the city will ever contribute money to it. But the hope is to, with the current commission and our city council is the only incorporated city in the county, that we can show a united front through resolution, so that they can, James and Anissa can use that as a tool as they work with UDOT and the state legislature to do what they can to make that project a reality at some point.
Thank you. And maybe James, I see you're still on this. You may be able to answer the question, but the county and city recently met with the Wasatch Front Regional Council, and UDOT was there, UTA and so forth. But it appeared that the interchange, and they talked about their priority processes, but it appeared an interchange was just based on transportation and vehicles and so forth. It was down the list quite a ways. How far would a resolution, and maybe it's not something that just plain doesn't hurt, but how much influence would a resolution have on changing that?
You bet. So to your first point, I think it's a challenge we have as a rural community, that a lot of the metrics and stipulations that are used for a lot of these larger projects and infrastructure build out are based on urban core numbers. And so we will consistently struggle when we only look at congestion modeling and safety modeling. WFRC has started 3 or 4 different areas that they're starting to look at, and that's economic impact to the community, it's connectivity, it is multimodal, and it is access and opportunity. And so in those areas, the interchange score is extremely high, especially for our community. At build out, the Mountain Green Town Center will bring approximately $3.5 million every year into the coffers. And much of that, again, is sales tax. And then some is property tax. To your point, though, Councilman, it didn't score very high, but in 2018, it was actually approved for the EIS to move forward. And to Ty's point, there was some disunity, I should say, within the commission that caused that to get pulled off because WFRC was just using the modeling of the other areas. And as soon as UDOT heard that there was a little disharmony, they pulled it. So I feel that if we can address the disharmony and say, listen, Morgan City is on board, the commission is on board, the community leaders, the business leaders, the chamber, it's now time for us to revisit this. I think it puts us back in the catbird seat, in the driver's seat with the community support, because we do have the economic impact numbers, especially again for a rural community that's looking at some growth. And what we're going to say to WFRC, UDOT, and the state is it's really time for UDOT and the state to look a little more forward, be a little more forward thinking on some of their projects instead of consistently looking backwards. So if you want to spend 95% of your $1 billion on transportation for your usual modeling, that's fine. But set apart 5% for this forward thinking and look at our community because we're being forward thinking. And that would be our argument to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts from the council?
I got one, Mayor. Hey, so is the other entities here in Morgan on with this, or are we just passing this resolution? I mean, it seemed like you're shaking your head, so I must have asked.
Keep going. That's exactly where I'm at. All right, keep going.
Well, I'm sitting here going, we're going to pass a resolution, and I'd love to see where the county's sitting at, where some of the others are sitting at before we go ahead and do this. And I'd really like to get some more information. I mean, you're talking about a town center for Peterson and Mountain Green. That's a pretty big topic, let alone just seeing this in a resolution. So I want more information. I want to see where the others are sitting at before we go ahead and pass this thing, is what I'm thinking.
You bet. And we have the resolution for the county commission on next Tuesday's commission agenda. I feel extremely confident that that resolution will pass. We have several developers that will sign letters of intent and letters of recommendation and support. And then we'll be going to the chamber at our next chamber meeting to ask for a letter from them. So if it's something that you would like to wait to do, we would, again, love to come back and talk to you about it. If you want to pass it here contingent upon the county resolution passing, we'd be willing to do whatever you're willing to do. We would be happy with your support.
Other council members, thoughts, input, questions? Jeff, Tony, Eric, go ahead. Eric.
I'll just reiterate. I just soon hold on here and see where everybody else goes. What ends up happening with this before we go passing this thing.
Me, Mayor, I think I'd kind of like with Eric, I'd like a little more information, stuff like that, as far as voting on it this evening as a resolution.
Tony? Thoughts?
Yeah, as he was talking, I was wondering, what is the temperature of the new county council? Are they, they on board with this? They behind it? Also, the Morgan Chamber. Would be nice to know what their feeling is as well.
I'll give you my thoughts. May get in trouble over this, but my thoughts. I think I'm looking forward to a golden opportunity, hopefully. In the past several years, several years, not just the past 2 or 3, we've had some county commissions that have not got along and seen eye to eye. There's been some disunity, and the city has not been involved in a conflict with the county. I am excited right now at the potential of the new county council coming together and being one united effort and in growth of whatever they may see as an appropriate thing for them to get behind. And what I would see our role in is the county council can draw together I would love the city to support that effort, if that effort comes to be. I'm hopeful it will. I'm not predicting it will or won't. I'm very hopeful that the new commission can come together and can cooperate on the various things that they have to deal with. They have a lot of things on their plate. The county council's got a lot of items to work through, to work with, that could be very, very beneficial to this community. So at this point, my hat's off to them, those that ran, those that got elected, and those that are willing to put that effort in. So that's my hope, is that things will come together and pull together. It can be a great effort. And I would like for the city to support that if it happens. But from my perception, it's too early to know that. We have some great people on the county council, but I would like to wait and see where that sorts out with the county council and what they come together on. If it's not this issue, I'm okay with that. I'd like to see what kind of issues they come together on. Mr. Rebert's presented a lot of kinds of things tonight, a lot of philosophies, a lot of pieces to economic development. I would love to see what the county council decides are the pieces they're in favor of, the pieces they want to put forth, the pieces they support. And I would like us as the city council to consider those pieces and hopefully show support for the items that the county council comes together on. I think the united effort's awesome. And Mr. Evers, you can pull that off, 3 hats to you, not just one. To combine, there's nothing better for a community than a united effort. Seeing things the same way, working on the same projects, that's when success can happen for our whole county. I really believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly, as you can tell by my emotion with that. For years, decades, we have suffered as a community by not pulling together. It's just, there've been a lot of opportunities that we have missed because we weren't willing to cooperate, pull together. So I'm excited about the potential, but I don't know if it's there yet or not.
Well, we're excited. We'll come back after next Tuesday. We'll try to get back on your agenda, and then I'll report back to you on the discussion and the resolution, and then answer any questions and see what direction you would like to go.
Mayor, is this on the COG agenda?
I know it's not. No, it's not, Tony.
Well, and the COG meeting's that's next Monday night anyway, isn't it?
Next Monday night, it's the COG agenda. Yep, it's not on the COG agenda.
County council doesn't meet until the following night. Is that correct?
That's correct, on the 2nd.
Would you like me to try to get it on the COG agenda? I'd be happy to.
Well,
Is it too late?
I would think it would probably make more sense to put it on the COG agenda in February. Third Monday of February.
The only reason I would suggest doing it as quickly as we can, Councilman, is the legislative session is presently going. They passed a tentative budget in case they have a COVID issue. And so at any point, they could shut everything down and have to make a bunch of decisions like that. And we're trying to get this package of support in front of legislators as quick as we can, just in case, in the chaos of what's going on, the decisions start being made and we want to show where we're at. We have some work to do to move it up through the WFRC list on the STIP for construction for sure. So, but if you think there's more value in waiting, we can wait, or we can try to get on the COG and just have a discussion really quickly. Whatever you think is the best way to move forward.
Don't know if you could get on the COG agenda for next Monday night, could you?
Well, we have to get on 24 hours, from my understanding, prior to the meeting. So I think we legally could get on. I have not looked at the COG agenda as far as action items. So I don't know how long it is. But we can try if you think there's value in trying to get it in, and we'll have some discussion on it.
Well, for me, I think it would be more valuable to discuss it in COG once county council had a chance to talk about it a week from tomorrow, or whenever it is they meet next.
I'm working on this particular item at the bequest and direction directly from the commission. So I feel very confident that there is genuine support, unanimous. And so I feel comfortable going in front of the COG, even though it's a day before the commission meeting, and presenting it. And even if we get general support on a condition of adoption of the resolution, I think I'm comfortable enough putting that to the legislators as COG support. But if nothing else, we have that discussion in front of COG and start having some of these projects being brought in front of that body to help give us some direction.
I was trying to look up some other dates of other meetings. Apologize. I'll see when they are. Again, you've heard, I won't try to restate what I said a minute ago. I carried on too long as it was. But I would think the more, and you're a better expert at this than I am for sure, Mr. Ebert, but I would think the more community groups like COG, like Chamber, like CDC that you get in front of, particularly early on, I would think that would benefit the unity piece. But again, you have expertise on that piece, and I don't. But I appreciate that, Tony. Good suggestions from Tony. Other questions, other thoughts? Or do you want to do something with that, with the resolution?
Mayor, I think I would rather, if we could hold it until all the councilmen feel comfortable, I would rather have a unanimous vote on it rather than several of the councilmen being concerned and wanting some of their issues answered and voting no. Even if it passed, it doesn't show our level of support. So if you don't mind, could I bring it back at a later date with the information that the councilmen have requested to show the support from either the COG and or the commission, so that they're more comfortable in their vote?
Denise, who placed it on the agenda? I guess what I'm getting to is a couple choices. One choice would be to table it to a date certain.
Yeah.
Another choice would be just to pull it, but I don't think it'd have to be the person that placed on the agenda to pull it. But we could just table it to a date certain, would be an option.
Are you asking when our next meetings are, Mayor?
No, I just learned. Mr. Weaver was talking about pulling this.
Okay.
I'd be more comfortable just tabling it rather than pulling it. Okay. I'll take a motion from the council, or the council feels they like to do.
Well, give me a date, and then I'll make the motion.
Eric, what is it?
Well,
give me a date.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
What's Eric's motion?
Yeah, I couldn't hear it, Eric. Sorry.
Well,
There's the 9th or the 23rd are our meetings. The council meeting is on the 2nd. The county council meeting is on the 2nd of February.
The COG's on the, okay, first.
And the COG's on the 1st.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we table resolution 2105 till our next meeting of February the 9th.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Eric, second by Tony. We table resolution 2105, our next regularly scheduled meeting, February 9th. Any discussion on that motion?
Yes.
Okay, Tony.
Mr. Ebert, does that give you time enough to do what you think you need to do to satisfy our questions?
Yes, sir. I think I can present to the COG and I can get the resolution passed and come back and report on the support or lack of support from both of those bodies. And then if you'd like me to present a little more information as far as the interstate and the absorption rates of the Mountain Green Town Center, so that you can see the importance and also at the end the viability of it, I'm happy to do whatever you want me to do as far as a presentation, either just support or a little more information, whatever you set it at. I'll show up and do what you want me to do.
I just wanted to make sure that gave you enough time.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody else? Any other questions, thoughts on the motion? Okay, so I'm not seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Let's go by roll call on this one. Eric,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and Jeff.
Aye.
Okay, motion to table pass, we tabled item resolution 2005, will be tabled to our next meeting on February 9th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Reaver. Okay, next item, management reports. Ty, will turn time over to you for your management reports. City council, as usual, you can think about items you have unless you give a report after Ty finishes. Ty?
Okay, so the first item, and there's in your packet, you can see that the windstorm that we had was declared a federal disaster. So that means that we qualify for public assistance. We will be going through that process to get the city reimbursed for some of our expenses. Of course, it's all contingent on whatever we can document. So whatever was documented happened, whatever wasn't documented didn't happen in the eyes of FEMA. So it's a pretty cumbersome process. I did this for 11 years prior to becoming a city manager. And so we'll go through that process and get the city reimbursed as much as we can. Any questions about that? Okay.
Good work.
We received a letter, a thank you letter. It's not very often the city receives a thank you letter, so I thought I would at least bring it to the council's attention, because this was a thank you letter for a development review meeting that we've been having. This was something that we started doing about a year ago. So what we do is we convene a meeting once a month so that people with development ideas or subdivision requests, all of those sort of things, they have a chance to meet with the city staff. So it has our engineer, our planner, building official, water supervisor, sewer supervisor, power supervisor, road superintendent, myself, Teresa. So we schedule this so that as people bring their whatever stage they're at in development, that we can review and say, well, you might look at this, and this will be a challenge. This is your next step. And we had an applicant that is just at the very beginning stages, like, oh, we want to build a house. How can we do this? Like, we want to do a flag lot. But they have no idea. They had no idea about, first you have to develop the property. There's 3 different application processes that they need to go through. And they just had a whole list of questions, and the staff did a really good job, I think, of helping them understand all that's involved with what they were attempting to do. And so I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention, and I am proud of our group of people, that the way that they handle themselves and really help people understand without just shutting them down right away, because it is overwhelming sometimes, all of the requirements, if you're not used to being a developer or a builder. The next thing is we passed a resolution, if you remember, on the diffuser project out at the sewer, how we had the bid opening and we went through those bid tabulations. When we did that resolution, we put a exact dollar amount on there, and or we passed it with that dollar amount, and I had to change that amount. So their bid did not include an amount for bonding, so it went $3,800, and I went ahead and approved the change to that notice of award. It didn't change the bid tabulations. It wouldn't have changed first, second, or third, or anything like that. It was a kind of a minor change, but because it's a different, then it will change the dollar amount than what the council approved. I just wanted to report back to you guys that I had made that change. It was a technicality. It wasn't based on their product. It cost them $3,800 to go through the bonding process that they did not include in their bid.
Do you need
And-
additional approval, Ty?
I don't think we need to change the dollar amount. We can do whatever we need to do, maybe with the advice of Gary. I just wanted to bring that forward and then also let you know that there is potential that we'll have change orders as the project hasn't gone through engineering at this point. We just awarded it based on, all things being equal, this is the company we selected and that's what they put in their project. But that dollar amount might vary by the time we get to the end of the project. So Gary, is that, are we okay with me bringing that to council, or at some point will we need to amend that resolution, or do I just bring every time a change order comes, maybe make the council aware of that dollar difference?
So the resolution itself is drafted so that the city manager can negotiate the agreement with the company that we determine is the lowest bidder. The reason for that is pretty much because of what just happened here, and that is that every once in a while you'll find that there was a small thing that occurred that would allow Ty to go ahead and with the contract, even though that small item, was different. My understanding in talking to Ty, I think, or Denise, I can't remember which one, was that still is under the lowest responsible bid of the next one up anyway. So Ty is actually signing an agreement that would be consistent with what you approved. Any change orders, I'm not sure how the agreement reads, but it would be good to bring those back to the council if they're significant. If they're smaller change orders, $1,000 or something of that nature, or whatever the council would like to see come back to them would probably be what you'd need to bring them back.
Okay, yeah, so the resolution does give me the ability, but it did have a dollar amount tied to it. So that's why I wanted to bring it back, because it was passed with the specific dollar amount, and didn't think about it at the time, but the likelihood that we end on that exact dollar amount is not very likely.
I think it was Tony that actually made that place that dollar amount in there, I remember. So it would really be up to the council as to whether or not, as to what you wanted to see come back to you.
Okay, thoughts, input, council?
So Gary, just kind of a quick question on that, just, I guess, thinking here. So we passed that resolution, we awarded it to that contractor. Let's say that at some point in the future, change orders and little things we didn't see surpasses that next lowest bid, or does not become the lowest bid any longer. Does that make sense? Then what?
Well, the contract's already issued. And
True.
So what you could do is, if you wanted to, you could stop the contract and rebid it. If the change orders look like they were going to be substantial and going to exceed what the next responsible bidder would be. But you remember, it's the lowest responsible bidder. And so if it may be that they're not the lowest price. So if you just gauge it off of price, you may not be getting what you want to get. But if they're the lowest responsible bidder, in other words, they're the best choice for the city, you could allow the contract to go forward even with the changes that would come through change order in the future. But that would be up to you. I think it may be a fair question for Ty as to whether or not he thinks that these folks are the lowest responsible bidder, or whether or not there's a likelihood that they will just kind of, through change orders, exceed the next bid, and whether or not that's a possibility.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
So they're honoring we're going to stick to the price, right? So what we got was the pricing. What we didn't get was how many actual feet of pipe is needed because of the placement of where the pumps are. the pumps are all locked in. And so all of our pricing is locked in, and these change orders would be true to anybody that was any one of the companies that we selected. It's not going to change. We're not renegotiating, or we're not changing their bid price. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
We have some options of where to place the pumps, and how to route the lines to each one of the cells. And so that's going to come through the engineering process. And so I think that we're
Ty's frozen, but I think what he's trying to say is it's consistent with the bid.
Well, it sounds like what he's trying to say,
Yeah.
Ken, is no matter who we gave the bid to, they're all gonna have change orders.
That's what he said. Yeah. And Jeff's dealt with these. Jeff has dealt with these before, where you've got something that doesn't matter who you chose, the prices are going to increase because of some variable that, is going to be the same for everybody. So.
Even that said, though, I like your idea, Gary, though, of bringing items that are significant maybe to the council. Could it fall to us then to determine what's significant and what isn't? In other words, set a dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
Ty, chime in on that, on what your thoughts would be on significant or not significant.
I think I could bring back as the project develops, and just keep you aware. And then if you feel like you would like before I make any decisions, we could probably discuss that, because I don't think that the scope of the project is going to change significantly. Yeah, minor things, but I don't know how to put the dollar amount to difference to that. I think we're going to be really close to the dollar amount.
But change orders would come with dollar amounts, though, correct?
Yeah, and that would only be if I guess it would be different. The difference is if it's something that, because of design, we've asked them to do a certain thing, versus them saying, well, now this is going to cost more because of an unanticipated situation. So if it's at our direction, I don't feel like that would be significant, right? Like we say, we want the pumps placed here because it's going to function better, but it's going to add 100 feet of pipe. That's different than them saying, well, we didn't know we were going to have to add 100 feet of pipe or go deeper, and so would like to submit a change order, right? So I don't know on dollar amount. I just feel comfortable keeping the council informed as the project develops. Like this one, I would say is very insignificant because it was just a procedural thing. We require bonding, but they didn't have it included in their bid, and I'll just maybe keep the council informed that way, and then if we get to a point where there's something that I feel is significant, then I'll keep the updates, but that way I can defer to the council if I feel like, well, that's going to be a significant change, or change the dollar amount, right, by a significant amount, which maybe like more than 10% or something.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I think the concern is that it just doesn't run away from us.
Right.
And not like Gary says, if it starts to, maybe we should be reevaluating. That'd be fine.
Any input from the council? Thumbs up. What are your concerns?
We'll just
Ty's input.
Yeah, just expect a regular report.
Yeah, I just appreciate Ty coming forward with it, and I think we just handle that as it comes up. We'll deal with it. And I think with this one, it sounds like I'd say just go ahead.
Tony,
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay, Tony.
No, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, so I will just have you give us updates.
Okay.
Each time. Okay.
And it could be the price of materials too, right? Like we've seen with lumber on other things where it's a significant dollar amount, but it is what it is for no matter who's doing the project. So I'll just keep you posted on how that project goes.
Okay. Any other updates, Ty?
So I'd just like to report, because we adopted that new surplus policy that we did convene a meeting with the those that could attend, and then we shared the information with the others. But we had 2 council members involved, the recorder, the treasurer, and myself, and I felt like that process went really well. We selected a policy or a process to sell some of our trucks, and we listed our first truck for sale on KSL yesterday, and it sold, and it's already gone and out the door, and that I really enjoyed not having it be a week-long belabored process, and we listed it for the top trade-in value, from how that was priced out. And I think that's going to be common with all of our vehicles with the low miles that we offer. We won't have any trouble selling them. And so I just wanted to let you know that new process is functioning, and I'm quite pleased with the outcome. So.
And I think too, it's probably important to point out there was a distinct feeling within the group there that we're not in the used car business. We're not looking to profit from it. Surprisingly, because of the price that we pay on a fleet or a state of Utah contract basis, we can almost make some money selling them quick like. But the point is, we're not going to try to get the top retail dollar out of it. It's just too much time and effort. We'll stick with our city business.
Yep. My last update, just to let the council know if you want to reach out, but Laurie Moore's father passed away yesterday afternoon, and I'm just really proud. I'm really proud to work here. She helps people go through this process with their family members as she's over the cemeteries, and she had to do payroll and get me the title and the keys to the truck. And yesterday she let me know her father did pass away. It was expected, and she said, I'll be in first thing in the morning to get the keys and the title to you, and I'll process payroll. And she got here and had a customer that lost his spouse yesterday, and she stayed, came back and met with them the rest of the day to console them and help them find a plot for his spouse. And as a supervisor, it's super difficult to not say, just go home and be with your family, when that's where she would have been. But there's nobody else that can do her job here in the city because we're just so small. But just a proud day for me. And keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And she'll be off the next couple days with her bereavement. But what an amazing group we have. Just express my love and concern for her, and also appreciation and all of our city staff. Not one of them would drop one of their responsibilities because of a personal matter.
It's family there, Ty. I think we're family.
Thank you, Ty. Appreciate that. Amazing group we have. I was second what Ty said as far as the workers, what they're willing to do. And when they come to me, it's always those positive kinds of things. They don't come grab complaint. It's always they're always positive when they come and speak with me as far as, what's happened, what's going on, ideas and suggestions. Every one of them. So thank you. Any information from the council, any questions or any other thing you want to bring up?
I know it's late and I know Gary can be brief, but maybe just an update on any of the legislative activity that looks like it could cause us any heartache.
We'll have Gary respond to that for sure. Thank you, David. Tony, anything else from you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Jeff?
No,
Okay. Eric?
No.
Okay, Gary, we'd like to turn time over to you for a few minutes to talk to us about the big legislative pieces that you're dealing with.
Sure. Yeah, I've taken much more of the meeting than I should have, so I appreciate your deference to that. But just really quickly, HB 98, which is that's a bill that I'm working on particularly hard, along with the league. That's the one that eliminates building inspection and plan review by the cities and counties, and turns it over to the developer at the election of the developer. No more building permit fees would be paid if the developer decides he wants to go ahead and do his own thing. And a bad idea from the beginning to the end. Also restricts any type of restriction that the city may impose on design standards. So anything that you've got regarding the pitch of a roof or the materials on the outside of the building, there's some legitimate concerns for inside those cities that try to control inside the homes. But there's also a lot of concerns over things like water conservation. If you eliminate the requirements that a city has for water conservation or the slope of a roof, especially in Morgan, you may end up in getting a lot of trailers essentially, or mobile homes in these areas. So there's a lot of problems with that bill. I spent time on the phone with the speaker this afternoon and the building industry, and we're trying to work things through, because there are cities that are way behind in building inspections for various reasons, and it is a very pressing issue. Next one is billboards. There's a bill up there that wants to light every billboard in the state. I call it light the world hashtag. So
Yeah.
it's a Bill Reagan bill that wants to, it doesn't matter where the billboard is, it would become electronic. One of the difficult things about that is, it doesn't seem like a big deal, especially in a community like Morgan, where they're spread out quite a bit. But what ends up happening is these billboards become 5 to 6 times as expensive to purchase if you decide you want to do a redevelopment project on a particular site. There's no way that you can remove that billboard because of the fact that they do turn digital. And so there are places in Salt Lake, for example, where redevelopment projects are held up specifically because of a digital billboard versus just a wood type billboard. Water, there's a requirement. The neat thing and unique thing is that Morgan City is way ahead of the curve when it comes to having our water, I guess you call it water board, meet and decide how the water issues within a jurisdiction. And so there's a bill that actually requires that type of meeting now of all jurisdictions, that they meet prior to a subdivision being approved. There's a ton of law enforcement bills, gun bills. I noticed that you're not going to need a concealed carry permit anymore over the age of 21. And then there's just a lot of other, there's a bill by Malloy that says that there's a prohibition against any regulation, and not only a prohibition, but they can sue you individually and charge you with a crime for any ordinance that would deal with guns in a negative fashion. So if those include like discharging a firearm in the city limits, target practice in the city limits, shooting the raccoon in your neighbor's backyard. All of those things would no longer would be a crime for you to have those in your code. The craziness continues. There's some interesting things happening with RDAs, where they would like RDAs to be able to be a direct tax collecting entity, rather than having to go through the county. You can actually collect the RDA would be able to collect the tax directly from the entity that it's dealing with. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. I can tell you about the crazy things, that are going on, but I told I told Cameron today, I said, it's kind of like getting on an airplane with a friend, and all of a sudden the friend looks at the pilot seat and says, "Hey, that's empty. I want to fly this thing."
Yeah.
And then telling your friend, "Well, you need to get the permission of first class first." And then he goes and tries to fly the thing, and once he gets it in the air, he leaves it there, because these legislators oftentimes do these stupid things and then they're gone, and the impact of the stupid things they do lasts for years and years and years, into the future. And none of them know how to fly the airplane, I can tell you that. Very, very few of them know how to fly the airplane, but they all become expert pilots the instant they step into that seat. And I guess I'm just a cynic. I'm sorry. I got to apologize, but I'll leave you with that little bit of information. I'll bring you back more next time.
Just one last question. The league opposes the driver's license suspension amendment, but yet it passed out of the committee 10 votes to 1. What was going on there?
There's a very powerful organization on the Hill. I continually tell Cameron, I said, we've gone so far right that we're left now. And Libertas is an example of that. Remove all government regulations. So one of the difficulties is that the courts are no longer putting out warrants when you fail to appear in court, because nobody wants anybody in jail anymore, and nobody wants to fine anybody anymore. And so the only thing that we really have as the courts have is to suspend the license until they appear, until people decide they want to appear. And they took that away the other day. It's a Libertas bill. The only one to vote against it was Carrie Ann Lisenby, which quite frankly surprised me, because she's been a Libertas supporter. But Libertas is the Koch brothers. You might know them. And they are becoming a very big and powerful organization. And they are behind a lot of these conservative bills, ultra conservative, especially the gun bills that you see up at the legislature. And they went from just 1 or 2 people to a staff of close to 100. So they're really very, very powerful up there. But their whole crux is to take the power away from government.
Wow.
Sound a little bit leftish to you?
Yeah, that's crazy. No, just like you say, it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But driver's license would still need to be voted on, though, right?
Drivers, yes, it still needs to be voted on. But if it's a committee bill, that means leadership is behind it. And the difficulty is it also applies to DUIs. And the argument was made that there may be a mother with 3 children that can't get to work because she doesn't have a license. Her license was suspended for driving on drugs or on alcohol. And the difficult thing is, I know the little girl who lost her legs because of somebody who was driving on alcohol down Sardine Canyon. And so, and this is like the 3rd time the guy had a suspension. And he's driving on suspended license and driving drunk. So it is bad. What's happening up there is going to make things a lot more dangerous for the common citizen, for our grandkids.
Yeah, some of that's scary. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gary, you didn't tell about the most important bill.
Which one's that?
The one where they're going to rename the capital, Washington D.C. Junior.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
a bill today was, they filed a bill to impeach. This is just really catching. Impeach Sean Reyes.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it just gets better. That it was interesting that the article opened the Capitol to the public yesterday and also announced that 3 legislators had
Yeah.
the virus.
Go figure.
I'm sitting
Oh,
there thinking, well, that makes sense.
yeah.
I shouldn't joke because one of them is in very, very bad shape.
Uh-oh.
He's on a ventilator.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay, once again, thank you for what you do, your support, your input, the way you think through things and the way you rationally come to some decisions and conclusions. I thank you for that. And this is a great group that does that piece for us. So I appreciate that very much for you. So thank you, each one of you.
Thank you for your leadership too, Ray. That goes unnoticed oftentimes. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I'll declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.